Hey guys, this is White Manga here with a new video, and in this video I'm going to be giving you guys 20 smart tips on writing dialogue. Before that, I just want to quickly say that this channel is sponsored by Akibento. And what Akibento is, they're basically an anime subscription box that sends out anime and manga related products monthly with a lot of exclusive items made by them alone. It basically costs $20.95 plus shipping for the first month if you use the coupon code ANIME at checkout. The items in the box are worth, $60 and above, guaranteed, with an exclusive t-shirt and pin every month. This month's theme within the Akibento box is spirits, and you can see all the cool stuff that they sent me that I'm opening and unboxing in this video. They have cool themes each month, so I hope you guys check them out. Now back to the video. Okay, so the first tip from me is try not to drag on. Make sure the words in dialogue or monologue progress the story in some way with good flow, cutting out all of the boring parts. That's why you see sometimes in scenes they skip all the greetings, because generally greetings are what you do in real life. You see someone, you say hi, what's up, la la la, but those are cut off because it's kind of boring, right? And it can slow down the pace of whatever story you're trying to tell. So for example, sometimes you see scenes begin mid-conversation where the conversation has already begun and they've already skipped all the greeting boring part and they're like into the crux of whatever is going on. All that's revealed in the dialogue is just vital information about the story or characters or mood of the scene, or just information or key points that are there to progress and push the story forward to make sure that everything develops. Once in a while, things like greetings or things that could easily be considered as boring are left in a scene, but you need to pay attention to how they are said, because maybe how they are said and who they are said to play a vital role in giving out information and pushing the story forward, whether it be a way of foreshadowing something in the future, etc. The second tip is that I recommend you brush up your knowledge on the English language and grammar, and that you try to use things like puns, rhetorical questions, hyperboles, personifications, metaphors, similes, and other figures of speech. These can be used to end scenes, start scenes, foreshadow things to come, convey character emotion, or flat out entertain. Quickly, for those who do not know, foreshadowing is basically just a warning or indication of a future event. And you can use dialogue to foreshadow in style, in pizzazz. So, for example, spoiler alert if you haven't seen The Wolverine or Logan by James Mangold. Spoiler alert. But in The Wolverine, a lady tells the Wolverine that he will die at some point, and he will die with his heart in his hand. Now, that could have been seen as a form of foreshadowing for what happens in Logan, where, spoiler alert, Logan dies, but instead he's holding the hand of his, DNA kind of weird blah 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 daughter, which is the X-23 young girl with, claws coming out from her feet and her hand, kind of like, just like him really, with adamantium and all that good stuff. But they're holding hands, and that's his heart, right? In a way, kind of, in the figure of speech, la la la, not literally. So sometimes you don't have to be literal about everything you say in dialogue. You can find really creative ways of conveying information. So technically, what she did say came to pass. He did die with his heart in his hand, but not his literal heart. Foreshadowing can also be visual rather than text sometimes. So an example would be Martin Scorsese's The Departed, where all the characters that died in that film had an X subtly placed in the frame of a scene prior to the scene where they died. So yes, foreshadowing can be very, very subtle, and it can be done in a way where people can look back and go, oh, so that's why this was there, and that's why that was there, and that's why foreshadowing is used a lot when it comes to twists, or, plot twist, or cliffhanger kind of stuff. Another tip would be to use the dialogue to show the relationships between the characters. Is the relationship stiff? Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it full of chemistry and history, etc., etc.? So for example, a captain named, let's call him Captain John Smith, talking to his subordinate Lisa Lampanelli. And Lisa's all, sir, yes sir, la 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 la. It's very formal and it's stiff. And that'll be an example of a formal relationship. But let's say it was informal, but it's pretending to be formal just to save face. And so maybe Captain John Smith tells Lisa to do something that maybe Lisa doesn't want to do, and then Lisa, rather than calling him, hey, Captain Smith, yes sir, blah blah blah, she goes, John, maybe calling him by his first name, and that, you know, that kind of sets the tone for, you know, opening up certain opportunities to where maybe these characters mean more to themselves rather than just, oh, ranks. And then Captain John Smith could reply like, that's an order, or something like that, and she could be like, you know, reluctantly do it because she has to do it, you know, because of the ranks and all, but maybe she doesn't want to do it because maybe it's the wrong thing to do. But it kind of tells you a couple things about what kind of relationship they have, in that there is that formal relationship with maybe their ranks, but they have an informal relationship as well, a casual relationship as well. It's definitely more than that, and feel free to be creative. I was just giving an example. Another tip would be for you to find your style. There are many ways to use text, and style itself is beyond just, you know, visual stuff. It also includes text, literal things like dialogue. So you can look at examples like the smart, quick, and witty dialogue in Guy Ritchie work or Tarantino flicks, or the over-the-top dialogue and stuff like Moulin Rouge with Baz Luhrmann, or like the creepy and occasionally slow dialogue in like M. Night Shyamalan work. So you need to find what works for you, whether it's a combination of all this, or, you know, find like a unique voice in how you write dialogue and make it work for whatever story you're trying to produce. Another tip would be for you guys to study your favorite works, and even if it means like looking at maybe cliche words that are put together, or just like overall just study your favorite works and see how the dialogue is put together, whether it be your favorite show, video game, comic book, movie. Look at them and try to put yourself in the shoes of the creators and try to figure out why they've chosen the things that they have, why they made the creative choices that they did. Study real people as well. Whether it be in your life or, you know, people that are in media, study them and try to keep track of the things that they say, do, and their mannerisms. Look at characters from other shows, film, video games, comic books, and all forms of media that are characters similar to yours, and try to figure out what makes them tick and see how maybe that can influence or inspire the character you're trying to bring to life. Look at how they use figure of speech and how they foreshadow, whether it would be the character itself or the creator. Study that and figure out what works for you. Sometimes this will require you to come out of your comfort zone. So for example, things like knock yourself out. We've heard that. I've heard that a lot. I've heard that so many times, but it's not something that I might say. And if I'm writing for a different character, you know, you have to almost become that person. Figure out what that person would say. You know, people you do know, you can have a good idea of what they would say, right? Because you've known them, maybe it's your best friend, you've known them for a while, so you have a good idea of what they would say in certain scenarios and circumstances. So you kind of have to be familiar with that when using your characters. You have to kind of know them, know your characters the same way you know friends and family. So you got to keep in mind that their dialogue or the way they say things will be different from the way you say things. So things like knock yourself out, I know what it means. So you ask me, hey, OD, you want, can I have the pizza, the last slice of pizza in the fridge? I say, yeah, sure. But someone else might go, knock yourself out. Because, you know, it has a different flair to it. So that's kind of what I mean. You have to keep track of the words. There was a time where I watched, let's say, the first season of Daredevil, where I just sat down watching the whole season, and there were a lot of lines in it that were just so interesting in the way they were used. And I also did the same thing with Game of Thrones, and I wrote down, like, quoting some of the lines of dialogue, like, the rising tides raises all ships, or all boats, or something like that. And it's smart, witty, fitting certain types of characters, and I sat down writing that kind of stuff. Or things like Madame Gao having all sorts of proverbs and things of that nature. I wrote them down, and you also kind of have to do your own research. We will get to as a separate tip later on. Or something like Varys in Game of Thrones, where normally I would say, you know, I wasn't happy at their death, or like their death brought me no pleasure. Someone like, you know, Varys in Game of Thrones would go, I took no pleasure in their passing. So read stuff, study stuff, and pick up on the little details. Another tip would be to keep in mind that maybe dialogue is not what you want, and monologue is what you want. Mono, one, dia, two. Monologue, one person talking. Dialogue, two people talking, or well, two or more, whatever. I personally really like monologues, and monologues can set the tone of a scene, it can end it, it can happen simultaneously as the scene is going on. So maybe you watch a film and someone's giving a monologue, but other things are happening visually. We're not actually seeing the person that's talking, or we see someone, let's say in a heist movie, explaining what happened in the heist and how the heist actually went down, but then they're showing like flashbacks of how it all unfolded. Key thing to remember is you want to show and don't tell. So bonus tip here, notice how those scenes operate, especially in heist movies. Someone says, I got a plan, or I got an idea, and then they skip to the thing actually happening. And as it's happening, visually they might be tricking the audience to think that maybe things are not going as planned. But more times than not, when everything is all said and done, it did go as planned. And when the plan has actually happened, then you see like the George Clooney guy, he'd come out and then explain what happened. Because they make sure to show you before they start telling you maybe all the things that you didn't understand about the plan in like some way of exposition. But the key thing here is that they showed and they didn't tell. So the George Clooney kind of character would kind of start spilling the beans and giving this monologue of how, oh, this person did this, and that's when we did this, and that's when we knew the money was right there for the taking, blah, 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 blah. Basically, if you do get the plan before the plan actually happens, either one, it's not going to be as interesting because you already know what's going to happen, they already told you, or it's not going to happen. There's going to be a plot twist. Maybe when they explain the plan before the plan actually happens, during the plan, something goes terribly wrong, they all get arrested, or something like that happens. It never goes according to plan, if we've already been told what the plan is. Hope you guys enjoyed that little bonus. Obviously, monologues can be used for all sorts of other things. You see monologues at the beginnings of things like SNL, or a coach giving a speech, or King Leonidas in 300, kind of giving that, oh yeah, tonight we died, and you know what I'm saying? So there you can find really creative ways to use monologue. A lot of times, especially in anime and manga, the exposition is used to, say, tell backstories or to teach a character who might be also indirectly teaching the audience or readers. Example of that would be, say, two characters are fighting, and maybe one character does a move that the other character didn't expect, and after they've done the move and the other character is dying on the ground, the character who won starts to explain maybe how his power works. And it's also he's telling the character who just lost, but he's indirectly telling us, the viewer. So you want to keep track of what your characters know and what they don't know, and you can use the characters that know and don't know, have them interact and find interesting ways to convey information to us, the readers, indirectly through the character that doesn't know. Another example would be to go watch My Hero Academia, where Deku, the main character, he kind of keeps track of all the heroes that he comes across and kind of has this note writing down, how they operate for, his own information purposes, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it'll come in handy. And you have him in the audience watching two other characters that he's familiar with battle. You kind of use Deku to inform all the characters around him in the audience to how those characters fighting are going to operate. Because, one, even though, say, the characters battling each other don't know how each other operate, they're not going to tell each other how they operate unless maybe one of them has defeated the other already. But before the battle comes to a close, they're not going to tell each other how their powers work, because then you're giving your opponent the advantage. So you have Deku far in the audience explaining to the characters that don't know around him, indirectly explaining to us kind of what's going to happen, almost predicting what's going to happen. But you kind of want to know your audience and respect them accordingly, right? So you don't want to you don't want to feed them everything. You want to respect them enough to kind of put the pieces together. So Deku explains how, say, Bakugo fighting Uraraka, and the fight during the tournament explains how Bakugo operates to an extent, but then you still want to leave room to shock us, the readers, and say maybe Bakugo does something unexpected or Uraraka does something expected, to still keep things interesting. Because like I said, if Deku just explains how the whole battle is going to go down, then you're telling and not showing. We already know how it's going to go down. It'll be boring even after we see it. You want to shock us with the actual action. A lot of shows, especially anime and manga, use this form of exposition. So, you know, Deku says, oh, Bakugo is going to do this, oh, Uraraka's in trouble here, and everything's kind of going according to plan, and then, plot twist, maybe Uraraka does something that Deku didn't account for, and that also shocks Deku himself, and shocks us, because we only know what Deku knows, right? And that's all we need to know for that scene to take place. Hopefully, y'all get it. With this whole dialogue, shenanigans, blah, 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 learning all this stuff, it kind of takes time. You know, even me, myself, I'm still kind of picking up on things and learning as time goes on. So you're not going to just know everything at first glance or just first read. It's something you improve on over time. All the English grammar stuff that I recommended earlier and all the studying and quotes things also apply to monologues, obviously. So you want to apply them where applicable, depending on the character or what kind of character it is. Another tip would also be fun to have like hidden messages and Easter eggs in your dialogue, because again, that can also serve as a form of foreshadowing if you want to use that. But hitting messages and Easter egg kind of stuff is always fun for hardcore fans to pluck and have fun with when going through your dialogue or rereading your material. Almost kind of like keeping it fun where applicable. You know, it could even be where the characters are, or the story is just a little bit self-aware, or breaking the fourth wall, or things like that, where it just keeps things light, if that works for whatever you're producing. Another tip would be to keep the text organic, which is very difficult to do, so I recommend you read it out loud. One of the creators at Saturday AM, where Apple Black, my series, is published and serialized, Raymond Brown, the creator of Bully Eater, recommended to me that, you know, you can put your words in like Google Translate and have Google read it back to you. You know, if you don't have anyone around you who's able to like read it out loud for you, if you don't have assistants, you can have Google read it out loud. And sometimes you can catch things that you wouldn't catch yourself because you're the one writing it. Sometimes it's good to like write it, go do something else, then come back and read it. If you have friends, editors, or credible sources that can read it and give good feedback, that's also great. It's a great way to catch errors, and it is also a great way to keep things organic, because then you have another ear to rest upon and kind of get, bounce ideas off of. Another tip would be rewrites. Would be to, when you write whatever you're writing, again, like I said, you can leave, come back, and not just like read it and go through it and look for errors and make sure it's organic, but actually attempt to rewrite it and find alternatives. And sometimes when you force yourself to find alternatives, you find something that's better. Sometimes you wouldn't, but sometimes you might find maybe a better way for the character to say whatever they're saying. Sometimes you can pass off your work to a different writer for rewrites, and that helps, because then you're really getting a completely different person to try and rewrite it, and then you guys can find a middle ground, especially if the writing is a team effort. Another tip would be making your characters have a signature tone about them, or just something signature about them that helps them stand out in conversation or dialogue, text, or anything of that nature. Sometimes this doesn't always have to do with actual dialogue. It could be the way they walk, it could be the way they do certain things, but it could also be the way they say certain things. It could be something they say all the time. It could be the way they laugh. One Piece is notorious with this, where they have their villains having ridiculous laughs like yo ho 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 hoi, ho 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 hoi, ha ha hee hee, whatever. Oda has a blast with that. One Piece villains, almost all of them have like ridiculous laughs. It could be, let's say, and using a character from my series, Apple Black, Fatimonga, and how he kind of always comes back to saying how pointless, or Naruto's Datebayo every 2 seconds. But, be careful not to overuse it, and maybe you can make your characters self-aware of it, that maybe they say it so often that other characters kind of notice it and clown them for it, or maybe even finish their sentences. Or you can be really creative with it, but the whole idea I'm talking about for this tip is to maybe think about having certain signatures about characters that can come out in their dialogue that really helps them stand out, and that could also make the dialogue interesting depending on how you use it. Another tip is to note that when writing, sometimes silence can be the best response. So you don't always need to have a back and forth. You don't always need to have any of the characters talking at all. Sometimes they can just read the room, look at each other, maybe certain stares, la 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 la, and boom, whatever happens needs to happen, or maybe nothing needs to happen. My point is that sometimes silence can be a useful or the absolute best response. Another tip would be name dropping. You know, this might not be applicable to everybody, but for what I do, this is me personally, is when I'm writing a new chapter or a new volume or things like that, I find creative ways to remind the audience of what's going on, and sometimes I find creative ways to remind the audience of who the characters are and what their names are especially. So if a character hasn't showed up in like 10 chapters or 5 chapters, find a creative way to have another character, you know, scream their name or say their name in shock. Again, manga and anime is notorious for this, so that's where you see this kind of stuff a lot. But you also want to find the creative ways to say that so that the audience knows who that person is, or maybe they're reading that chapter for the first time and they've never, not just for the first time, but reading that series for the first time and they're starting with that chapter. At least they know who that character's name is. What you don't want is, you know, 20 pages in and they don't know what the character's name is, and you know, they have to go do extra research. So you have to find creative ways of putting in that character's name. It happens a lot maybe when a character returns and then people look and in shock somebody says his name. You see it a lot in anime and manga especially, but you see it in a lot of places. Another tip would be for you to be a writer. Read stuff, write stuff, look up dialogue, and you know, learn as much as you can. Have a variety of sources you can learn from. Watch this video, watch other videos on the topic, and that would help broaden your horizon to where you're not just learning from me, you know, because it's not like I know everything, because I'm still learning, but kind of broaden your horizons and study even things you don't like along with things you do like I recommended earlier. Another tip that's probably geared towards comic making or sequential arts is watching out for the font size and size of the word bubbles and the shapes of these things. So let's say you have a uniform font for your comic. In my case, it'll be Wild Words. And you know, maybe a wacky character appears, and you know, I changed the fonts to be something a little more wacky to reflect on the type of character that's speaking. You can also adjust the shape of the word bubble or word balloon or text bubble or text balloon to also reflect the tone of the scene, whether it's something more humorous where the text bubble is a little more bubbly, right? Or something a little more hectic where it can look like the text bubble is kind of like exploding and conveying more anger, or you know, things of that nature. You can see all this stuff a lot in Western comics or Eastern comics. Again, another tip, but more gearing towards the visual side of things, because sometimes when you can visually see the character in a certain pose, with his folding his arms or looking away or pouting or blah blah blah, it can also help the reader figure out how to exactly read that piece of dialogue. So you can, and even if it's not visual, even if it's like a text, like a novel or things like that, you can still have like narrating the scene and being very descriptive, setting the mood. So when the dialogue is actually read, it's read in the correct way by your audience. So basically, you're keeping track of body language. Another key tip would be to outline what a scene should achieve, what the dialogue should achieve before diving into it, before writing it at all. Make sure that you outline all the key points that this scene must hit, that the dialogues must hit, that so-and-so must say, and then make sure when it's over that you've ticked everything off the list. That way you are sure that you're progressing the story, because those outlines and what those key points are, they are there to push the story. They are there for that purpose. So for example, ridiculous key points. Sano realizes he was a girl the whole time, and then the end of the world will happen in 4 hours. That's what this scene should accomplish. That's what I'm going to use this dialogue to do. Bam, bam, bam. You structure it to make sure you hit those notes, and then when it's done, you know you've pushed the story forward. Now, I just gave a ridiculous example, but you get my drift. Another tip would be that pauses and interruptions help with the organic flow of a dialogue. You know, and this is where you get to use a lot of ellipses. That's the ... So it's like, I am ... a girl ? Or two people are having a conversation and someone interrupts them. Those are things that, you know, happen in real life, and those are organic. You know, sometimes someone can like pause and interrupt themselves, so maybe they're going on a little rant, and then midway they realize something and they like pause ... and maybe they start talking in a calmer tone after the pause. You know, so you can find creative ways to use pauses and interruptions, but those are things that also assist in making sure that the flow of dialogue or monologue is organic. One of the final tips would be to generally keep it simple. Don't get sidetracked too much. Make sure the dialogue is straight to the point. Again, making sure you're hitting off all the things in your outline, but don't sidetrack too much unless you have a reason to, unless that's what you want to do. Let's say a character is talking and they have some kind of disorder that makes them get sidetracked, and you know, you can also find ways to keep it entertaining. So maybe the way they sidetrack, or maybe the way they come back to their point, has good humor in it, and you can be like subtle about it, and maybe there's a subtle backstory to why they operate that way. But going back to my point, which I just sidetracked here, keep it simple. Sometimes keeping it simple is the best way to do things. And then, you know, to the last point is maybe don't keep it simple. Break all the rules. Screw everything I just said. Be free. Be a creative fool. Whatever you want to be. Do whatever you want to do, as long as it works for you. But these are kind of like the foundations you should use to at least know the rules before you break them. You can't break what you don't know. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys find it very useful. If you guys have any extra tips on dialogue or monologue, please leave them in the comments below. Feel free to check out my comic Apple Black, published and serialized in Saturday AM, and you can read the first 4 chapters free online on Saturday AM. Links below, links to everything you could possibly need, including my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. It's in the description below. Or you can purchase Volume 1, which came out in 2014, and that has the first 9 chapters. Volume 2 is on its way, and I will be releasing key details about it. For those who have been waiting for Volume 2, I can tell you Volume 2 is 100% done. I just need to finish some colored illustration. But when it comes to like the actual pages of my comic, Volume 2, 100% done. So, you know, right now it's just being like proofread and stuff like that. So that's, you know, that's all I can give for now. More details coming soon. Check out Saturday AM. We have several issues out. Over 70 issues released. And you can check out the latest issue. You can subscribe to the magazine. Links again to everything you could possibly need will be below. Or you can read the latest free magazine, free issue on the site directly. And all that kind of support, all the support, liking this video, subscribing, clicking the bell so you stay notified each time I upload anything. All forms of support that I keep and continuously getting from you guys is highly appreciated, and I hope you guys continue. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe, because I got more stuff coming, more details, more Apple Black Volume 2 stuff, more fun drawing stuff in general coming soon. It's Manga, and I'm out.